Leaving home is never easy. People don't leave home because they want to. There's always something that makes you leave. That's one thing we always have to have in mind, that when people are coming into your country, it's not really because they just want to be there. There's something that's making them come there, because nobody wants to leave home. People are in search of hope. People leave home because it's not home anymore. Nobody wants to live in a country where there's no peace. Nobody wants to live in a country where there are droughts. If you know that there's somewhere else where your life could be better, obviously that's where you're gonna go.
In the 1840s, people would stand here to wave a final farewell to relatives on ships leaving Galway for Canada and the United States. And the lighthouse over there on Mutton Island would be the last lighthouse they would see on this side of the Atlantic. The next one would be in New York. There were over 1 million people died during the famine from starvation and associated diseases. And it's estimated 2 million people endured forced emigration. Many of them went on ships that became known as coffin ships across the Atlantic to the New World, and many died on the journey.
It's really heavy and really difficult to see that a 6-year-old child had to go through what Celia went through as a parent, because I can just imagine what that would be like for me going through that, not being able to provide for a child. I mean, just reflecting on not a particle of food was found in her stomach. That means that she must have gone a very long time, without any food or any provisions that were essential to life.
Coming to a place like this, I find it tragic and quite sad that something as common as food would be the cause of death to a little girl who possibly had a very promising future, and a lot more other people dying because of food. And food is something that we take for granted these days, actually. It's something that you don't really think you're gonna be out of at some point. It's very tragic and it's very powerful. Reading this, we have to remember there are a lot more people out there in the world. They're going through this, not 2 years ago, not 50 years ago, right now. As humans, there's a lot more we can do for things like this not to happen.
It's worth bearing in mind that in the decade of the 1840s, 49% of immigrants into the United States were from Ireland. They were people who had endured desperate, forced journey of emigration from dire poverty and need and starvation. Of course, the potato blight was a huge causal factor of the famine, but there was plenty of food on the island of Ireland at the time to sustain a population, but much of it was exported, and the excuse given for that was the functioning free market had to be satisfied. So lots of grain and corn, lamb, livestock and beef was exported from ports in Ireland while 1 million people starved.
These are events that nobody plans to be a part of. They just happen. Ireland has a history of immigration. As a country, that's what everybody needs to take into account, that we have been in this position. We know how this feels. That's one more reason for Irish people and the Irish government to be more welcoming to immigrants.
Nowadays, Ireland is sometimes the state of refuge for people who are forced to emigrate from their own country and seek security here in Ireland. There are currently 7,700 people applying for international protection in Ireland. Many of them are resident in up to 40 direct provision and emergency accommodation centres dotted around the country, sometimes in appalling conditions, and they endure what's effectively an obstacle course in trying to prove that they qualify for refugee status here in Ireland.
Now, the direct provision system takes away one's dignity, it takes away one's freedom and their right to autonomy. We often forget that seeking asylum is not a crime. It is a fundamental human right and one that should be safeguarded. We need to be questioning why people are getting punished for seeking protection, why people are being institutionalized when they arrive in Ireland. Basic rights are taken away from them. For example, the right to cook, the right to be able to choose what meals you have, when you have those meals, the right to decide what your children eat and when they eat. The direct provision system in Ireland is absolutely unfit for purpose and it should be abolished. No one should have to be serving an unending sentence because they have come to the country seeking protection. Seeking asylum on the grounds of poverty or fleeing because of reasons related to climate change should be prioritized as well, and those people should be granted protection in as much as the people of Ireland who left during the famine were considered refugees.
It's blatantly dishonest that on the one hand the government campaigns for special status for undocumented Irish in the US, but on the other hand don't extend the same status to people seeking refuge or who find themselves in the position of being undocumented here. Recently Ireland was elected to the UN Security Council, and it's to be hoped that Ireland will use its newfound spotlight to highlight the desperate status of people who are seeking refuge all over the world for various different reasons. Perhaps we can really celebrate what the word security should really mean.
I wake up to children screaming and the banging from the room upstairs. All familiar sounds. I've been here a while. The noise used to bother me, but not anymore. It's the silence that scares me now. It stirs up things I'd like to forget. But forgetting is a privilege I lost the day I walked through those glass doors in Dublin. I still remember the security buzzer beeping. I am sorry, it must be my watch. I still remember sitting across the man in a white shirt. I heard the fear in my voice as I told my story. A story I'd like to forget, but dare not. I cannot miss a detail. So I try to escape, but the silence makes the memory so vivid. Now do you see why I don't mind this squeaky bed? The fire alarms at dawn or the intimidating loud knocks? I'll take anything over silence. This is my life, and these empty walls are home now.